This is Elia Yasharala, your Black family advocate, with another episode of the Through the Fire podcast. The last two episodes, we discussed if you combine the episodes, the top 10 reasons why Black people need to stop dating. Today, we're going to talk about, the subject is Black people don't have a culture. Black people are just crazy. We're going to talk about that because I feel like it undergirds the topic of dating and relationships and marriage. Remember, in this podcast, we discuss all things Black family, right? But we need to talk about the mental state of Black people in this country. I can't speak globally. You know, if there's folks in the global space who identify with that, identify with what we discussed today, that's welcomed, of course. But for now, we need to talk about Black people in the United States of America and what we see out there in this world that we keep calling culture. You know, we keep saying it's our culture. And there's a portion of us that have a huge problem with that, right? And the problem is because what we're referring to as culture is not necessarily culture. I think Neely Fuller Jr. is the one who said that Black people don't have a culture. What we have is a pathology, right? I'm not quoting them exact because I didn't see that comment. That comment actually was relayed to me from a friend of mine, but it resonated with me because I do agree that what we see when it comes to Black folks is more of a social pathology. And I take it into another space too, and I see it as trauma. I see it as trauma. So what Black people have done is, it may be like the last, let's say since the 1960s, Black folks have taken these traumatic experiences around them, and it has manifested in all of these negative ways, and principally because of the breakdown of the family. The breakdown of the family used to be the thing that help us maintain some semblance of normalcy, right? But even as I discussed the breakdown of the family, there was still issues going on with the family. The family was never perfect. The Black family was never perfect. There was things going on in the Black family that we just simply did not want to talk about. We didn't want to talk about molestation. We didn't want to talk about, violence, like domestic violence, stuff like that. Things we didn't want to talk about, back in the day, but even with that said, the Black family still had a lot of value in terms of holding us together as a people. And the Black family has been severely attacked and severely interrupted. And as a result of that, what has developed is a street life. What has developed is a street culture, right? And along with that street culture is getting more and more intense because street culture now has found a way to make money. And once in the United States of America, once money is involved, it almost legitimizes whatever the industry is, But here's the deal. And here's what the real problem is, right? We're taking a people who are traumatized and mentally ill, right? And we are placing them at the head of the culture. And we're norming bad behavior and mental illness. We're norming it. Now, how this plays out on the ground is regular everyday folk who should be getting help for their mental illness now feel justified in their behavior, or they feel somehow pacified, or I'm not even sure what the proper word is, but what they feel is, I don't need to get any help because, this person right here is an image that I can look to that represents me because, he seems to have it figured out. I'll figure it out. But I think that's so unfair. It's unfair for you as a Black person to walk around mentally ill and crazy. I'm just going to use the word crazy. I know that we're not supposed to, But I think crazy is more the point than to say mentally ill. Mental illness sounds clinical. It sounds like a sickness, right? So I'd rather say crazy, right? Because it's unfair for you to walk around crazy and know that you're crazy and you do nothing about it. It's unfair for you to walk around crazy and pretend that you're okay, pretend that you're normal, and for you to establish relationships with people and then you bring your craziness to them. It's unfair for you to be crazy and for you to go and have children and crazily raise those children and make your children crazy. All of that is unfair. It's unfair. It's unfair to the children. It's unfair to society, right? It's unfair for you to be a crazy person and for you to pass that legacy of craziness on, so that way we're dealing with generations and generations and generations of craziness moving forward, right? And here's what the problem with the whole thing is, because we can address it from many angles. We can talk about it historically. We can talk about it spiritually. We can talk about it clinically, right? We can talk about it from all those different angles. But until the individual takes the responsibility and say, I need to address the craziness in my life, talking about it is not going to solve it. Talking about it is not going to do anything for it. Until the individual steps up and say, I recognize the craziness in me, and I'm going to do diligence to get the help that I need. We can have these collective conversations, and I think the collective conversations does more danger to it. I think the clinical terminology does more danger to it, right? Us trying to label it things. I know there's a need to do that. I get it, right? But until the individual steps up and take individual responsibility for the craziness in their lives, it's not going to do much to change things on the ground. The harming of one another that we see out there in the so-called culture, it's just nonstop. The shooting and killing one another over trivial things, mostly triggered by just simply being emotionally out of control. A traumatized person who is emotionally out of control, out there harming one another in a whole bunch of ways. Shooting, killing, stabbing, robbing, beating, just acting out trauma, lying and cheating. And here's the thing that makes it complicated for you as an individual. This is what makes it complicated for you. The fact of the matter is Black people are a divine people. You're going to hear me keep going back to this because at some point this needs to sink in. At some point this needs to resonate with folks. But Black people are divine people, which means then that for our sake of normalcy, we are fully dependent upon righteousness. We thrive off of righteousness. Our unwillingness to be a righteous people is the reason why we're locked into the conditions that we're in. We talk about our economic struggles. We talk about our political struggles. We talk about our educational struggles, our housing struggles. We talk about even our mental health struggles. We talk about all those things, right? But we're locked into that circumstance because we are never going to thrive off of the same things that the people around us thrive off of. But we watch the people around us very closely and we look at them. Look at how the Jews do. Why can't we just pull it together the way the Jews do? Well, look at the Asians. The Asians doing such a great job. Listen, I do it too. I study other communities and I make the same comments, right? I do the same thing because I do the comparisons. Why are we struggling as a group versus these other groups, right? The number one reason is because we are a divine people and we thrive off of righteousness. But we're so resistant to that. For some reason, we know better. Right? For some reason, we're too intellectual to be divine. Right? We're too, We have a whole bunch of excuses, right? But we fail at everything we attempt to do. And not because these are not good people who've led us, right? We've been led by great people. We've been led by people like Marcus Garvey. We've been led by wonderful people like, Malcolm X, amazing people who have done things for us as a community and spoke on these topics and so on and so forth. But where have we failed? We failed in that we don't believe in the divine nature of us as a people. We don't believe in our divine power. So we continue to try to do it the same way the rest of the world does it around us. And we fail and we fail and we fail. And in that process, our so-called culture, which is really our trauma, intensifies. It intensifies. And over the generations, I have had a chance to see people who, if you go back to the 70s, these people would have been ostracized in the community, the pimps and the drug dealers. Over the decades, I've seen them rise to the point where they're the heads of the culture, right? And see, this is believe it or not, right now there's a battle going on between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And that's really at the heart of that whole battle, is that segment of Black culture, quote unquote, that's frustrated with the cultural pimps, right? People don't see Drake as a cultural pimp. People don't classify him as a cultural pimp. He's just a pop artist. But people like Kendrick can see the pimp in Drake, and Kendrick resents it. Right? Because what Kendrick is also, he's very protective of his people. I don't care about him being with a mixed woman. I know people keep bringing it up. Well, he's with a mixed woman. He himself is Black. He himself is not mixed. And he's protective over his people. Right? And what he can see in Drake is the cultural pimp in that dude. And that's where the resentment is coming from people like him. Right? On the other side of it, no one cares about Black folks being pimped or robbed, battered, abused, deceived. In fact, for a lot of people, that's their preferred state of Black people. That's how they prefer Black people to be. So much GOAT talk about who's better, LeBron or Michael Jordan and this person, that person. What the real frustration is that LeBron and Michael Jordan, two great basketball players, are actually from the same seed. That's what the real frustration is. They're from the same seed. So we got to pit them against each other. It's either LeBron or Michael Jordan. Got to pit them against one another, as opposed to saying, wow, these are two great Black men who play basketball at the highest level, the two best that ever did. No, that's never the conversation. The conversation is always pitting them against one another. Right? Now, why am I saying this? Because one of the things that Neely Fuller Jr. pointed out when he talks about the pathology of Black people is how white supremacy and white domination pits us against one another. Right. And how what ends up happening is the very worst of us get moved to the front of the line. Right. And it's intentional. It's intentional because the threat really, this is not Neely Fuller Jr. saying this. This is me saying this part. The threat really is if we ever understood that we are divine, if we ever operated in the divine. Right, then we will become the most powerful people, the most powerful group. Right. So what must be done at all costs is to keep us from being a divine people. And individually, we fall for it. Individually, we get up every day and we just make do with our mental illness and we don't address it. Every day we get up and we just make do with our crazy. No big deal. Black folks are conditioned to even believing that we can live with our crazy. right? A wonderful lady by the name of Dr. Joy DeGruy wrote a book called The Post-Traumatic. Let me find it here because I pulled it up on my. It's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing. And that book is really about everything that we experience as a people in slavery and how it impacted us mentally, psychologically, right? Emotionally, and also spiritually. But that's a book. Have we read it? Have we heard her lectures? Right? Are we as a people paying attention to that? Are we paying attention to our mental? See, we do have collective trauma through slavery. We have collective trauma through subjugation, segregation, and things of that effect. We have collective trauma. But how it manifests individually from person to person is where the real concern is. Right? There's people who are walking around here right now who hate themselves. They hate themselves with a passion. Every day they look in the mirror and they hate what they see. Where's that coming from? Why not address that? Why walk the earth, walk around with that kind of intense emotional, baggage? There's people out here whose hearts are filled with violence and filled with insecurity. Why not address that? Why not clinically address that? There are resources. At some point, you're going to bump into someone who is crazy also. And it's just going to be two crazy people in an entanglement doing what crazy people do. But the premise of post-traumatic slave syndrome, and I think I'm going to put the link in the description for people who are interested in reading it. But the premise of it, Dr. Joy DeGruy asks a question. After slavery, after all of these things happen to us as a people, right? She asks two questions. One question is, were we as a people impacted by those experiences? And obviously the answer is yes, right? So the question that she asked is, what kind of help did we get? What kind of services did we get, for our mental health when it came to the end of slavery, right? And obviously we didn't get any. We walked off of the plantations empty-handed, and no one, of course, was interested in addressing our mental health concerns. Right? And this is not Dr. Joy DeGruy saying this, but this is me saying this. Then what immediately stepped in was the Christian church to even further the mental illness. Right? Christianity has done an exceptional job, right, in furthering the mental damage to Black people in the United States of America. Now, I'm not saying the Bible did it. I'm not saying righteousness did it. I said the Christianity did it. The Christian church did it. Right? It did a number to us. Right? Because what you had, a lot of the force behind the Black Christian church was nothing but white supremacy. Right? And if we tie it back to what Neely Fuller Jr. is saying, when he talks about the fact that Black folks don't have a culture, but they have a pathology, if we tie it back to what he's talking about, is white supremacy is the main culprit, right, in the mental illness or the pathology that we see in the Black community. I know a lot of people don't want to accept that. A lot of folks today, especially amongst Black people, don't want to accept that white supremacy has anything to do with our state of being today. We just want to look at the condition and say that's just how we are as a people. No, that's not how we are as a people. Not at all. This is not who we are. You know, the true nature, the true core of us, our true nature is divinity. We are divine people. And that has become we become completely hijacked, but that's the problem that we have. We've permitted that hijacking, right? We've permitted that, again, by looking to other nations to be our solution. And at the same time, we had no choice, right? Because we didn't have control over resources. Right. We have been stripped bare of any power that we had, any access that we may have had. We've been stripped bare. So we've had no choice but to go to these other nations for everything that we needed: clothing, shelter, water, food. We even go to them for education. Right. So we are a product of them. We are a product of them. So how do we come up out of this? First and foremost, we need to acknowledge the fact that individually we're mentally ill. Let me just say it like this. If you are here's something you can look at and to tell whether or not you're mentally ill, right? Whether you're dealing with some kind of mental illness. The first question is, am I a black person? If you are a black person growing up in the United States of America, you're dealing with some level of mental illness. Now, I'm not saying, I can't say exactly what your specific diagnosis of mental illness is. But if you're a black person in the United States of America, you are dealing with some level of mental illness, period. Right? It is traumatic growing up in the United States of America. And I would even go further and say, if you're a black person growing up under the domination of white supremacy anywhere, you're dealing with some level of trauma, some level of mental illness, some level of trauma. Right? So that's the first sign. Second thing is, if you experience any level of poverty, you're dealing with trauma and mental illness. If you experienced any level of poverty, you're dealing with trauma. If you had one parent, especially if it's both, but if you have one parent that abused you in any way, right? It could be physical, it could be sexual, it could be emotional, verbal, it could be neglect. It could be failure to tell you they love you. It could be failure to acknowledge you, failure to show you appreciation, failure to demonstrate concern. It could be neglect on any of those things there, right? You're dealing with trauma and mental illness. And you need to get it addressed and stop pretending it's not there. Stop pretending the insecurities are not there. Stop pretending the self-hate is not there. Stop pretending altogether. Be 100% real, 100% forward facing. Stand up as an adult and address your issues. Seek clinical help. Seek and ye shall find. Seek spiritual help. Seek and ye shall find. And seek to live a divine life first and foremost. Your diet, your habits and practices, the places you go, the people you hang around, the influences. Be divine in your thinking and change the vibration of divinity around you. In other words, if you develop your spiritual ear, you can hear when you're in circumstances that are not for you as a divine person. You develop your spiritual eyes, you can see when you're in places, or around things that are not for you as a divine person. But to just let it go and it's no big deal, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting everyone around you. It is a big deal. That expression goes, hurt people hurt people. You know why hurt people hurt people? Because you have normed what the hurt is. It is so normal to you. So you've normed it. Now you take this sense of normal with you around other folks that you did not intend to impose this upon. Do you know when you sit back and you talk to parents? I've talked to parents before, right, who've traumatized their children. And when I've talked to them about it, they all look shocked, like, what? I had no idea. You know why they shocked and amazed and had no idea? Because they normed that bad behavior. So they didn't realize that they were imposing that on someone else. And then what they do immediately is start going back into their history. Like, but this is how I grew up and this is how I... There's an epidemic happening in the country right now that a lot of folks are not paying attention to, right? Millennials and Gen Zs, they're different from Gen Xers and Boomers, right? Gen Xers and Boomers are very weird and hypocritical people. We're crazy. I'm a Gen X, so I'm going to say it very honestly. We're a bunch of nuts because Gen Xers and Boomers, as family, we traumatize one another, but then we stick in there with one another. We stay together. We even tell one another we love one another, you know, amongst a whole bunch of craziness. And then we talk about that in almost glowing romantic and idealistic terms, you know, as well, no matter what, we stuck together. But millennials and Gen Zs are different, right? Millennials and Gen Z will walk away from family members and never look back because they can't deal with the trauma. What millennials and Gen Zs prioritize is their mental health, their spiritual well-being, and their sense of peace. And they will say goodbye to mommy, to daddy, to sister, to brother, to auntie, to cousin, to grandparents, whoever is causing them constant grief and turmoil. They'll walk away and just won't look back. Now, it doesn't mean, though, to the millennials and the Gen Zs, it doesn't mean that you're fixed because you walked away, from a mess, but it still means you are a mess. And you still need to get that, whatever issues addressed. But I just want to point out one of the differences between these two generations, boomers and Gen Xers versus millennials and Gen Zs. Why am I pointing that out? Because until we are honest about the hurt that we're holding inside and the harm that we're causing, until or unless we're honest, we're going to lose our family. That's what's at stake. That's what's at stake. The Most High did not design family for family to break apart the way they do. He did not design family so the divorce rate can be where it is. The lack of marriages could be where it is. He didn't design family for that purpose. The purpose he designed family for is for community and for love. And family is literally a genius idea. It's a blessing to have a brother. It's a blessing to have a brother. In a time of need, your brother is supposed to be by your side, right? In a time of need, brothers are supposed to help one another with things. Brothers are supposed to help one another move their furniture when it's time to move furniture. Brothers are supposed to help you fight your battles, whatever your battles are. I'm not talking about physical fighting because I don't want us as a people physically fighting one another. But brothers are supposed to help you fight your battles. You're going to have battles in life. It could be anything. Your car could break down. You should be able to call your brother and say, hey, yo, man, I'm stuck on the whatever. Can you come pick me up? Brother, yeah, I got you. You know what I mean? That's what brothers are for. Right? Brothers are supposed to be there for you when you're down. Going through a rough period, your brother got it. I could help you out. No problem. Because I know you would do it for me. That's what brothers are for. That's what sisters are for. That's what family is for. Because life is going to happen and you're going to need to turn to family and say, hey, listen, look, we're living in the end times. We're looking at a time when society is about to collapse. Things are going about to, we may lose order. We may lose law and order. Right? There's a time for families to be together, not apart. You're vulnerable out there in this world when you're familyless and alone. There's nothing good about being alone. It is mentally taxing to be alone and without community. And I know for a fact that family is not always community. And this is why we got to stop being such cowards and address our hurt, address our pain, address whatever's going on with us in terms of our mental health, and stop just letting it slide by like it's no big deal. You see, the pain of mental illness is more insidious than, let's say, a toothache. You have a toothache, it's going to annoy you and cause you pain every day, and you're going to want to get it addressed. You get up and run to the dentist. But mental illness is a pain too. It's a pain there too. We're already a half an hour in. I didn't want this to be a long podcast. I just want to encourage people to please address your mental health. It's unfair for you to walk through life pretending that you're fine, because you know what you're going to do? You're going to pretend this, because this is one of the things that's happening. You have a lot of folks out here pretending that they're not mentally ill, pretending that they're fine. And they get up in the morning and they go out every day and they live their lives day to day and they just pretend that everything is fine, right? But deep down inside, they're plotting and planning some of the worst things on this planet. They're plotting and planning every day to cause terrible harm to lots of people. Why? Because that's their own unaddressed mental illness. Some folks are doing it different ways, right? They're getting in relationships and they are dealing with people and they're deeply insecure, severely emotionally handicapped. And then they're causing harm to that person when that person disappoints them, right? There are men who are not allowing a woman to leave a relationship because they'll cause her harm. I mentioned the story, I think, in the first podcast of the video of the man, I would call him a boy actually, who shot down this girl in a parking lot. For what reason? I don't know the details again. I don't know why. But relationship harm that you see people doing to one another, relationship harm. And it goes both ways, male and female, right? The harm is not always done through violence. Sometimes the harm is done through cheating, robbing, stealing, just savagely indifferent to how someone else is feeling and how you're harming them. And why are you that way? What made you that way? What happened in your past and your background that made you that way? Needs to be addressed. You need to stop pretending that you're okay when you're not. I sit back and I watch wealthy, very, very rich and famous people get out here in this world dealing with all this unaddressed trauma. And because they're famous and because they're rich, right, they believe that they're unscarred or they're unfazed. And they get out here and they do the most outlandish and craziest things, for the public to see. And then the public looks back and watch them and say, hey, I must not be so bad after all, because this person over here is just like me and I'm just like them. So I must be okay too. No, none of you are okay. Fame and money does not dictate whether or not you're mentally stable. The choices you make, the values you uphold. Those are the things that dictate that. I want to continue to encourage us as a people to address our mental illness, to address our spiritual shortcomings. I want to continue to encourage us as a people to live a divine life in every stretch of the imagination. Live a divine life. That's a life that includes proper diet, a life that includes prayer and meditation, a life that includes living your life according to the commandments of the Most High God and according to the standards of the Most High God, and get away from looking at the people around you and trying to coordinate your life with the folks around you, because people around you are not living a proper and a divine life. They're leading you the wrong way. And don't think because they're see, they can prosper off of the lying, the stealing, the killing, they can prosper off of that wickedness. We can't. I don't understand why that's difficult to see now. It's been hundreds of years, thousands really of years of us trying to live our lives and prosper the way they live and prosper. And for us, it's only led us to the bottom. And not only led us to the bottom, but it's kind of like fixed us here at the bottom. Right? Because we're still looking at them trying to do what they do. We can't. We can't. A divine people have to do things a righteous way. So I wish you all peace and love. I wish you all unity. I wish us all unity, and above all, I wish us a divine life, right? Where we can get the mental help that we need, mental clarity that we need, understand that we are traumatized people that deep down inside have a divine nature. And I just wish you all the best. So I hope this podcast helped you. I will put links to the books that I mentioned in the, hopefully I'll put the links in the description. I have to figure out how to do all of that, but I wish you the best and stay blessed until we meet again. All right. One love.